Tonight, the Assad regime overthrown in Syria. But what will that mean for the region?
Some of the rebel groups that took down Assad have their own grim record of terrorism and human rights abuses.
What's next for the Syrian people and the Middle East? Plus, as Trump nominees make their case for confirmation on Capitol Hill, the president-elect talks about his top priorities once in office. And
this is an opportunity to receive and be tested in a private, uninvasive way.
An at-home test to detect colorectal cancer. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation. The world grapples with a new Middle East tonight after the collapse of the Assad regime. Good evening in Washington, I'm Jenna Browder. In a dramatic turn, Syrian dictator Bashar al-Assad has fled to Moscow, seeking asylum after rebels seized Damascus, ending his family's 50-year rule. While celebrations erupt across Syria, the country remains fractured, with factions vying for control. Senior Washington correspondent Tara Mergener is following the developments. Tara, one of the world's most oppressive regimes, brought down in just days.
That's right, Jenna. The fall of Assad marks a pivotal moment for Syria, but the path ahead is uncertain as factions vie for power in a war-torn nation. Assad's departure creates a power vacuum in Syria as rebels celebrate the end of his family's 50-year rule. Inside the presidential palace, rebels displayed Assad's luxury goods while the crowds ransacked the building and celebrated. Rebel leaders, including a former al-Qaeda member who turned against the terror group, declared Damascus liberated on state television. While crowds rejoice, Syria remains fractured with clashes between Turkey-backed forces and U.S.-supported Kurdish fighters as ISIS lurks in remote areas. President Biden is warning of an ISIS resurgence, already prompting U.S. airstrikes on 75 targets. As Syria grapples with the chaos, the world watches to see if the nation can find stability or descend into further turmoil.
But as President Biden said, there is risk and uncertainty about what comes next. There's an opportunity to build something better in Syria, but there is concern that terrorists, jihadists, and other people who do not have the United States' best interests at heart, to say the least, could take advantage of this.
Now, Israel is securing its borders by targeting military assets in Syria to limit Hezbollah and Iran's influence, focusing on chemical weapons and rockets. After Assad's fall, Israel temporarily seized a strategic buffer zone established in 1974 along the Golan Heights, which serves as a demilitarized area between Israeli and Syrian territories. Israel continues airstrikes on Iranian and Hezbollah-linked sites as part of its strategy to minimize security threats.
What Israel is doing is really at the benefit of the entire world, because Israel is taking off from the market special weapons that I'm sure all of the terrorists around the world are very eager to get their hands on.
Meanwhile, the fall of Assad renews hope for the family of American journalist Austin Tice, kidnapped in Syria in 2012. President Biden offering a reward to anyone with information to get him back, Jenna, on American soil.
All right, Tara, thank you very much. And Bill Raggio joins us now. He is the senior fellow and editor of the Long War Journal at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Bill, welcome. So Assad's regime is over. What do you think is next for Syria, and what's at stake here?
Hello, and yeah, that is an excellent question. It's difficult to assess what's going to happen next. However, I suspect that the fighting isn't over. There are several factions. The Syrian so-called rebels aren't one united group. The group that ousted Assad, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, that is the al-Qaeda-linked group. Its leader was a member of al-Qaeda, and it still has relations with al-Qaeda leaders in Syria. That's the main faction. It's a Salafist jihadist organization that is looking to impose Sharia across Syria, despite what it claims now. Then you have the Syrian National Army, backed by Turkey, that wants to go after what's known as the Syrian Democratic Forces. That's really the Kurdistan Workers' Party, a terrorist organization backed by the U.S. So I don't see things holding together. At the very least, I would expect the Hayat Tahrir al-Sham and the Syrian National Army to begin targeting the U.S.-backed factions.
Yeah.
You're not going to have a united Syria here. Then you have the issue of chemical weapons and other weapons of mass destruction and other weapons systems that the Israelis are going to be targeting. The Israelis moved into that buffer zone. So I don't think the war in Syria is over. I just think the Assad chapter in this war has ended.
Yeah, Bill, what do you think the U.S. should do here? What should the tact be of the United States?
At the very least, do not support Hayat Tahrir al-Sham or the Syrian National Army. Both, one is currently a special or a foreign terrorist organization, and its leader is a specially designated global terrorist. The other has jihadist organizations with its rank and file. The U.S. should not interfere except in cases of destroying chemical weapons or seizing chemical weapons. That is in our interest and in the world's interest to prevent them in falling in the hands of jihadists. I think the U.S. needs to reevaluate its position. There are U.S. troops in eastern Syria, and the U.S. needs to reevaluate whether they need to stay there. They're there to fight the Islamic State as well as to, so the U.S. has a force, a presence in eastern and northern Syria. But the question now is, how sustainable is that force? The U.S. should consider if it's going to stay, it needs to bolster its forces.
Yeah.
If the U.S. decides to leave, it needs to, it needs to do so carefully.
Bill, just about 30 seconds left, but what does this all mean for Israel?
Yeah, Israel has traded one enemy of the Iran-backed axis of resistance for another, a jihadist group that is no friend of Israel, despite what it may claim now. The leader, Jalani, has threatened the Israeli state within the last year. Jihadists don't like Israel and seek the end of the Israeli state.
All right, Bill Rajia with FDD. Always nice to see you, Bill. Thank you so much for coming on tonight.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Well, a major breakthrough in the manhunt for the killer of an insurance executive in New York. Police named 26-year-old Luigi Mangione as the man who allegedly gunned down United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson last Wednesday. Tonight, he is in questioning after an employee recognized him at a Pennsylvania McDonald's and called authorities.
He matches the description of the identification we've been looking for. He's also in possession of several items that we believe will connect him to this incident.
Police say the man was carrying a handwritten manifesto criticizing health insurance companies, along with a gun that matched the one used in the killing. Police also recovered fake IDs and an American passport. Authorities believe he acted alone. Now to the Trump transition. The president-elect is laying out his goals for day one in the White House. Sitting down with NBC's Meet the Press, he touched on plans to boost the economy and pardon January 6 convicts. He also doubled down on a big campaign promise: mass deportations for illegal immigrants.
Is it your plan to deport everyone who is here illegally over the next 4 years?
Well, I think you have to do it, and it's a very tough thing to do. But you have to have, you have rules, regulations, laws. They came in illegally. The people that have been treated very unfairly are the people that have been online for 10 years to come into the country.
And Trump also vowed to end birthright citizenship through executive action, but said he would work with Democrats to reach a solution for dreamers, immigrants who were brought into the U.S. illegally as children. Bree Stensrud is here with us now. She is an author and the director of Women of Welcome, a ministry that encourages Christians to engage the Bible on issues affecting immigrants and refugees. Bree, welcome. So a recent Lifeway study finds 91% of evangelicals favor immigration legislation to tighten our borders. That same number, though, also supports immigration measures that respect the God-given dignity of every person. Millions of illegal immigrants have poured into this country under the current administration. Bree, how do you see the border crisis affecting our country?
Well, I mean, just came back from the border just a couple of days ago, and what we see on mass media is not actually what is really happening at the border. So I think that there is a mismatch of what is actually really happening at the border. The Border Patrol is doing a fantastic job of processing people, the vast majority of who really truly are trying to come through a legal asylum pathway. But I do think that there is a massive level of frustration and disunity in our country because there is a crisis at the border, mostly a humanitarian crisis, but we still do not have enough enforcement there at the border that is curtailing illegal crossings. It's massively down. Border Patrol is doing an incredible job. We're apprehending more people than we thought that we ever would be. And so there's a kind of a mismatched approach, but I think there's a heightened level of frustration in the country for sure.
Yeah, indeed. What do you make of the idea to mass deport illegal immigrants? President Trump says they're going to start with the criminals and go from there.
Well, I think anyone who is here undocumented in the country, most people who are here undocumented in the country want a pathway forward. They want to get right with the law. But I absolutely agree that those who are either violent criminals or have committed crimes and who are here undocumented absolutely should be prioritized for deportation. I think what concerns me the most is when you actually start moving through other populations of that undocumented population, and that is mixed status families.
Yeah, you know, the first administration got a lot of flack for separating those families at the border. This time, Trump is saying they don't have to be separated necessarily. The whole family can be deported together, putting more emphasis on the family unit. Bree, do you think we'll see entire families choose to leave?
I mean, it's a very sensitive situation. These are very heartbreaking individual stories of families who have all kinds of various status. And you're talking about separating a family because think about that choice. What would you do in that situation? Would you choose the safety of your children or would you choose the unity of your family in those moments? So these are very hard, very specific individual stories of mixed status families. You're also talking about deporting tender age U.S. citizen children, which is very troubling to think about in general.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Bree, it's nice to have you on this evening. Thank you so much. Have a great night. And up next, Ukraine's President Zelensky makes a bold proposal, what it could mean for the conflict with Russia, when Faith Nation returns. Welcome back. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says he is open to having Western troops deployed to Ukraine as part of a larger effort to end the war and guarantee his country's security. President-elect Trump is calling for an immediate ceasefire and met with Zelensky in Paris over the weekend. My colleague John Jessup recently went to Ukraine for a one-on-one interview with President Zelensky. The president said he hopes Trump will help bring peace.
I think that Putin understands strength only, so then he would see that there is this strong president, strong country standing with Ukraine, and then we can achieve peace through strength.
And you can watch more of John's in-depth interview with President Zelensky on tomorrow's 700 Club and Faith Nation. Meanwhile, South Korea's president is being barred from traveling overseas after his failed attempt to impose martial law plunged the nation into political chaos. The ban comes as justice officials there investigate whether his brief decree constitutes an insurrection. President Yoon avoided impeachment this weekend when government party leaders boycotted the vote, but opposition members vow to try again. The U.S. remains committed to partnering with South Korea to ensure regional security.
We are confident that ROK will continue to work through its political domestic challenges. And I would just say that, you know, our relationship is ironclad, and we remain focused on the defense of the peninsula.
As of now, President Yoon still controls the South Korean military. All right, up next, a major step forward in the fight against one of America's deadliest cancers. Could it help save lives? Find out next. New cancer numbers show cancer treatments are rising among younger adults. Between 2020 and 2023, treatments jumped nearly 12% for people aged 18 to 29. They also increased among others below the age of 50. While cancer is still more common in older adults, experts are concerned to see rates climbing in younger people like this, especially for diseases like colorectal cancer. Well, colorectal cancer kills more than 50,000 Americans each year. The good news, home test kits for early detection are now available. Medical reporter Lori Johnson has the details.
Record numbers of young people are being diagnosed with colon or rectal cancer. According to doctors, that's largely due to lifestyle choices such as a diet high in red meat and processed foods, obesity, lack of exercise, and smoking. While this cancer affects all groups, African Americans are as much as 40% more likely to die from colorectal cancer than others. Fortunately, that could be changing.
Here at Trinity Baptist Church, a predominantly Black congregation in Columbus, Ohio, parishioners learn how to prevent early death from colon cancer so they can serve the Lord on this side of eternity as long as possible.
Assistant Pastor Janet Shepard's family has worshiped here for 5 generations, which can be common in these pews.
This is our home and has been our home for a long time.
What's not so common here is Janet's decision to get a colonoscopy, a procedure that can detect actual cancer or precancerous polyps.
Some people say, if I don't know about it, I don't have to deal with it, but you will eventually have to deal with it.
Janet's procedure revealed 3 precancerous polyps, which were removed during the same colonoscopy. Without that screening and discovery, the polyps would likely have grown into tumors, possibly even taking her life.
Had I missed that opportunity, who knows what would have happened? Those polyps would have remained. We don't know if they would have turned to cancerous. They're precancerous, but they would have remained in my body and had the potential.
During worship, Janet passes out blue colorectal cancer awareness ribbons and shares her testimony, hoping others will follow her lead.
When you talk about it from the pulpit, when you talk about it in your circles around church and that type of thing, people listen, and it's like, wow, if that happened to Reverend Jan, if that happened to whoever, maybe I need to listen to what my doctor's saying.
I said the first miracle he did was at a wedding when he turned water to wine.
Senior Pastor Victor Davis believes it's totally appropriate for spiritual leaders to give medical advice at church.
It is not just a place where you come and fellowship and worship, but it's also a place where you receive resources that you might be able to go back and serve the community better.
He adds that leaders of Black churches in particular carry a responsibility to protect their congregation's health.
The African American population in many cities oftentimes is the population that does not have access to the information that is needed so that they might get the health care that they need.
When it comes to getting a colonoscopy, there can be roadblocks, such as the procedure cost, no transportation, someone to accompany them, or the ability to take off work. As a potential solution, Ohio State University started a program using home test kits, not to take the place of a colonoscopy, but to cheaply and easily identify those who should make it a priority to get a colonoscopy and those who may wait. When you take a home test, you put a stool sample in this little container and mail it to the lab, which can detect microscopic traces of blood in the stool, a red flag for colon cancer. Some Trinity members are receiving the tests and urged to take action if needed.
This is an opportunity to receive and be tested in a private, uninvasive way. And that if it comes back positive, you can take the next step. This is a preliminary opportunity for you to get control on your health and know what's going on in your body.
Dr. Sabankar Chakraborty, a program developer, says the goal is to motivate those in the earliest stages of colorectal cancer to get a colonoscopy, rather than waiting until they possibly experience symptoms such as visibly bloody stools and other unusual bowel activity, abdominal pain, or sudden weight loss.
And once they are diagnosed at later stage, then the risk of death is high. For example, if you got diagnosed with stage 4 colorectal cancer, there is a 90% chance that you will not survive for 5 years. But imagine if you get a colonoscopy and you get precancerous polyps removed, you have suddenly increased your chances to 100% survival.
Dr. Chakraborty says people not involved in the program can order home tests online. He reiterates those who get a positive test should schedule a colonoscopy, adding the often dreaded PrEP isn't as bad as it used to be.
The good news is there are several what we call low volume PrEPs, so you don't have to drink as much as you used to do before.
And there's little to no pain.
So there are sedation techniques with where you can be just completely asleep, pretty comfortable, and when you wake up, you're all done.
So while home test kits and colonoscopies aren't anyone's idea of a good time, doctors say they're definitely worth the effort because they could save your life or the life of someone you love. Lori Johnson, CBN News.
And still ahead, a grand reopening. The world was watching. Next on Faith Nation. Finally tonight, Notre Dame Cathedral's heart is beating once again. For the first time since the devastating fire nearly destroyed the historic church in 2019, the towering landmark reopened for worship. The reopening ceremony on Saturday was marked by prayer and a chorus of psalms, alongside the cathedral's beautiful organ. Over 1,500 dignitaries attended the celebration on Saturday evening, including President-elect Donald Trump. The restoration of the structure that took nearly 2 centuries to build in just 5 years, it is recognized as a moment of triumph. Wonderful to see this time of year. That's going to do it for us for Faith Nation tonight. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Have a great night.